Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm heading back to the 2021 Fantasia Film Festival to discuss a different take on a ghost story called Martyrs Lane. Martyrs Lane follows a lonely young girl that lives in a vicarage that is visited by a mysterious but friendly presence that, as it appears, is a spirit of a young girl. The two become fast friends, but the longer the spirit lingers, the darker and potentially more dangerous situations become. A few years ago, I would have probably told you that no horror film ever stood the chance of scaring me unless it featured a ghost of some kind. Some of the spookiest movies out there have been simple ghost stories, and even though Martyrs Lane is indeed a ghost story, it's one that isn't necessarily trying to scare you. Instead, it's one of emotional depth, with psychological, thought-provoking elements thrown into the mix. It's also a slow-burning horror drama as well, as the further you watch the film, the darker the atmosphere truly becomes. And that's when the really troubling and even sometimes terrifying ideas come into play. A big part of that comes down to the perspective of the film, told through the eyes of a young child, unaware of the, more mature aspects of life that parents try to conceal their kids from. And the more the ghost kind of comes into her life, the more it kind of exposes this girl to, and the more she begins to understand about what has happened in this family's broken history. I found the overall feeling this film elicits is kind of haunting, but not haunting in the traditional sense, but more so from an allegorical, mysterious sense, because it is absolutely deep and meaningful, but not in a light, fluffy way, but a dark, depressing way, something that is unfortunately all too relatable by a lot of kids. And I appreciated that the film was bold enough to approach this concept so honestly. It's also made really well. A part of the haunting atmosphere is the cinematography and just how certain scenes were shot and what angles they decided to show and maybe sometimes decided not to show. It's all kind of beautiful in a way. Lots of uses of bed sheet, window curtains swaying in the wind, lit up by a foggy light outside, which, is somewhat traditional for a ghost story, but again is approached entirely from an original vantage point. Also, the acting. As this film is highly saturated in drama and tragedy, the actors all had to play an assortment of sadness, loneliness, depression, and anger, and sometimes that's a lot harder to do than any other emotion, and every single actor here did an amazing job, especially the children. In terms of negatives for the film, I would probably just say the fact that I think that it's somewhat predictable. I'm not sure if they were really trying to hide the secret of who this girl is, or was, or what happened to her, but most of it I kind of figured from the beginning, and was mostly right. What's more important here than who the girl is what's going on in the living girl's life and her relationship with her parents and sister, and how she kind of needed this weird connection to the ghost in order to mend whatever is broken in her own family. So even though I do think it's somewhat predictable, I don't think that that's the end of the world, because it's probably not the most important aspect here all around. So let's go ahead and break down my final score. From an unbiased technical perspective, I think that this movie was made really well. Most of its strength here lie in the writing department, as this was a very interesting take on a ghost story, as it's incredibly deep on an emotional level. I think the acting is also superb most of the time. The atmosphere of the film is very dark, but also intriguing, and the cinematography is just as haunting as the scenarios this girl finds herself in. This score is 82%. My bias score, or just how I felt about it overall, is a little bit lower because I found myself more intrigued with the film than entertained. It's different and it's incredibly well made. And you know what? People need to be talking about what this film means, and ultimately, when it ends, what exactly that means too. But it's also not a movie that I'm trampling over people to watch again either. So it's a little bit of a give and take scenario. This score is 72%, meaning that at the end of the day, I scored this film 77%. 77 out of 100 possible stars, or a B-letter grade. Guys, have you seen Martyrs Lane? If you have, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below, and if you haven't yet, let me know if you're planning to. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review, and until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies, we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert, he is the #1 critic that I go to when I need